Welcome back to Butterfly. Discover the world on America's majestic Mount Rushmore. Over the past 100 years, the statue is still standing 18 meters high. It's the great people who make history. The great presidents of the United States. The US media has conducted surveys several times to find the presidents, the most influential in the history of the United States. And in today's video, let's find out. The top 5 greatest presidents of the United States are AI. He was the first president in American history. He was interim from 1789 to 1709. In nearly 300 years of American history, who is more honored than George Washington? Americans honored him as a great founding president, call him by the name of Father of the Nation, in many city boulevards, park monument, lake, or even the main postage stamps. There is the shadow of George in the heart of America. Compared to the talented people around him, Washington is not the best. You can't just do science. I just invented and did it. Politicians like Benjamin Franklin. You're not a scholar. Formalist Thomas Jefferson. Father of the U.S. Constitution. You don't have the legal ability. Like John Adams, it's called the Giant of Independence. And it doesn't have the brains trust as Alexander Hamilton, who laid the foundation for the American economy. In short, compared to the outstanding talents mentioned above, in each field, Washington doesn't have that extraordinary power, but history has given him a place of honor. Above all the best individuals in America, location, but all of America's most brilliant minds, they all obey you. Honoring George Washington is the commander-in-chief of the U.S. militia through 2 wars. It's a war against the Indians and the French, 1700 years ago to 1708, and the American Revolution, liberation of the 13 colonial states from the British Empire, 1775 to 1787, at a time when conditions were poor. Your militia are just amateur soldiers. Lack of training and lack of food. They lack equipment and guns, while his opponent is the good army. Or, the First Empire was in both. 6 American and African countries. Washington has steered it skillfully to go to victory, forcing the kingdom. You must recognize the independence of the United States. You're the enemy that I'm most obsessed with. Then General Napoleon of France, who carried the conquest across Europe. Washington's reputation and prestige reached so far. In 1790, when Washington has left the political arena to return to old age, President John Adams still appointed him in the position of Lieutenant and Commander-in-Chief of the United States to scare the French. Avoid the young America. Face the risk of war from the Empire on the other side of the ocean. That's illustrious. That's what prestige is. When the Revolution won, all glory is for you. Position of Supreme Commander-in-Chief. The infection also belongs. But Washington is not in the spotlight. He said, resign. After completing the assigned task that I took with a lack of confidence, and then calmly returned to the farm back home. Historian Goldenwood concludes that the greatest decision in my life, Washington is resigning as commander-in-chief. Even at the peak of power, the European aristocracy was shocked by this. And King George Zuba of England called him the greatest man in the world. Washington is the only president. They get absolute support with 100% electoral votes in the hands of the Supreme. But Washington, they also face many difficulties and challenges. It was a time of transition between monarchy and the American people are still holding the net. America is the people of the colony. From the time of their fathers, they were taught that honor your king, that Britain is the great independent mother country. What is freedom? What is federation? Loyalty to the royal family is the only way to live. In the first term, he's traveled extensively across 13 states. At that time on the cobblestone streets and horizontal potholes across the United States. His 2,400-mile journey. Where to go? He also had the demeanor of a democratic leader. Without a parade, no laxo. To the town, he put his carriage in. The city comes to the people as a friend, ready to sit on the crumbling roofs, to listen to every wish. Mind, President Washington has gone so far. Wherever you go, you are welcome. For the new Americans, he's the greatest president in history. And so, number 1, of course, is George Washington. Abraham Lincoln was the 16th President of the United States. From 1806 until his assassination in 1806, Lincoln led the country through the American Civil War, the moral crisis, culture, the country's largest constitution, and politics. He succeeded in abolishing slavery, strengthening the federal government, and modernized the U.S. economy. President of Abraham Lincoln. He was the first Republican elected to the office of president, but it comes from a mediocre background to the highest office of the United States. You have demonstrated a noble nature, vision beyond time, and has made a huge impact. It's not just America. President Abraham Lincoln, who was instrumental in ending slavery. He was the chief architect, the United States of America. After the Civil War North-South in 861 and 865. Here, it's not just a political and military crisis in the history of the United States. It's also an important turning point, both economically and socially. There are regime conflicts between the two. North and South America want to become great powers. We have to resolve this conflict, and the contributor, the biggest step in the process of solving this is Abraham Lincoln. Slavery in the South, along with outdated production methods, has hampered the process of American capitalism. The northern states are making tremendous progress in the industries, but it's been converted back because of the lack of raw materials, lack of resources from the south, not to mention the conflict that made the southern states no trade with the north that imports goods from outside, pushing the pattern higher. Lincoln understood that this is a turning point that you and the United States must cross. Abraham Lincoln was a great economic leader, political and military. He directed the entire Union Army, won many big battles, using many methods blockades, such as blockade of the sea, distraction tactics, rapid attack without seizing the land. Lincoln proved to be a president. He used extremely good people, a series of generals in his hands. They use all their talent. The unisex Grand General, Commander-in-Chief of the Northern Army, if the North, led by President Abraham Lincoln. 7 battles in this Civil War. Maybe today, the United States is no longer a strong country and the most important thing in the world, or to become an intellectual nation with backward agriculture, along with human slavery, or divided into 2 countries, or maybe a little water. Can say Abraham Taper has made a powerful impact. The direction of world history, the American Civil War. It was the bloodiest war in American Only in history. The Battle of Gettysburg, the damage was up to 45,000 people. After the war, the South lost the war. Abraham Lincoln ordered it. Give them 25,000 servings of dry food. He also ordered the printing of 28,000 to 130 release papers for South Vietnamese soldiers. None of them were considered traitors or prisoners. It's all about the unity of the people and the United States. Despite 5 years of war, but the economy of the United States, under President Lincoln, it is still guaranteed. The national bank that took control of federal guaranteed banking services as well as credit. The federal government at the time has imposed tariffs on goods imported from Europe to limit competition from the outside and encourage the development of domestic industry. United States government. It also supported the creation of a providing free arable land to settlers and help immigrants. Also at this time, the Interstate Railroad was built and income taxes applied to have funds for war. Especially under Lincoln, American culture is thriving. A series of classic works in art literature born can say, if Washington was the president who gave birth to America, it was Abraham Lincoln. Our people shaping the mighty America of the present. Abraham Lincoln has eliminated slavery, the most condemned human slavery of all time. He also officially ended slavery with a declaration freeing his slaves. It also encourages border prohibition of slavery and promote the 13th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. Ban slavery across the country. He is a symbol of democracy and freedom, not just for Americans, but for humanity. You are the one. Lay the groundwork for miraculous of a later U.S. superpower. Without you, maybe America could never be the big. His influence affects the United States more than 100 years later. Can say, the image of Abraham Lincoln is already in critical stature. Same with George Washington. Roosevelt was the 32nd president from year 19 until he died in the year 1945. As a member of the Democratic Party, he was the first president to be elected for 4 terms and become the central figure of major world events in the first half of the 20th century. Roosevelt has directed the federal government for most of the Great Depression, Implementation of the domestic agenda with new economic policy to deal with the worst economic crisis in the history of the United States. As the supreme leader of the Democratic Party, he has built the new economic policy alliance, the modern libertarian organization of the United States. During the first half of the 20th century, his third and fourth terms, dominated by World War II, the war ended soon after his death. In his first 100 days as president, starting for third years in 9 Roosevelt has started a lot of different big programs. In the first term, from year 19 to year 19, Israel's new economic policy has been adopted and saved the economy, especially to create jobs, solving the 7-year problem and reforming the economy is improving rapidly. From year 19 to year 19 as World War I was about to break out. After 5-9 when Japan invaded China and the Nazis became aggressive, Israel has provided financial support and strong diplomacy for China and Britain while remaining neutral. Your goal is to create America into the arsenal of democracy, supply of ammunition, and while other countries do the fighting. February 19 with the approval of the U.S. Congress through Dawah, Leslie Roosevelt together the aid to the countries fighting against the Nazis. Next to England, he was elected by the United States. It's almost a unanimous decision to declare war after the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor on 7/10 2 years 1941. He looks after the general, mobilized the full force of the US economy to support the Allied war effort. Although criticized for being awkward, the United States then has seen the state of 7 karma disappear, and the economy is growing rapidly. Never been before. Roosevelt dominating American politics, not just during my 12 years as president, but many 10 years later. He is the conductor of voter remixing. That later, to form the party system for the 5th time. Your New Deal alliance has brought together labor unions, modern machines and factories in the big cities, the white race, people who receive social assistance, African American, and white farmers in the southern United States. Diplomatic influence of Roosevelt. It's also on the world stage. Long after he died, it has to be told to the United Nations and the Australian Written These system are examples of the vast influence of his government. Roosevelt so far has always been regarded by scholars as of the greatest presidents of the United States. He was the 3rd president of the United States. He served to terms from year 1801 to year 1809. He is the founder of the Democratic Party and was a very influential political philosopher, one of the people, according to the greatest liberalism of modern times. Before the American Revolution, was a member of the Congress of the Colonial States, and I'm a freedom and democracy activist. In the American Revolution, you're also a key figure. Stand with Washington. Military leaders of the 13 victory over the British Empire. Later Maine, you are who wrote the United States Declaration of extremely famous, and the thoughts, the views in that manifesto. He became Kim Jong-nam, ideal for many characters. Later organization and country contributed greatly to law on the principles of American democracy, along with President George Washington, one of the great figures of the North American Revolution. That fame has echoed around the world. Sinjin has advocated for human rights, the freedom of speech, religion and the press, and also out of respect for freedom. Then he had to deal with a lot of slander of irresponsible newspapers. Thomas Riverson is also a farmer. He invented a kind of tractor. It's been used by American farmers for years. He brought a paddy mill from Europe to the United States and encouraged Robert Min in the development of this type of harvester. He's also a believer in submarines, and health is one of the key players. Except smallpox vaccination. About architecture, Thomas Zenderson painted the style for the Mutacino building. There are 35 rooms. This is one of the most beautiful history buildings of the United States. He also drew the schizo electricity of the Blackman Capital and the original buildings of the University of Arizona. About tools used in the home, Thomas Selson invented the folding chair, rocking chair with the improvement of many other items. You are often considered. He is the father of the patent office because the first patent law was passed. He supervised through. That's why Thomas Everson's influence, the formation and development of the United States, is impossible to ignore. Theodore Roosevelt. Theodore Roosevelt was the 26th President of the United States. From the year 1901 to the year 1909. It's an important factor in American politics. He became president in 1901 after the assassination of William McKinley. And then, he quickly established his position as with his own image. More than a century later, the culture and politics of the United States is still deeply influenced by his legacy. But not everyone knows this. It was President Theodore himself have continued the path to get America out of isolationism and eventually became the world's leading empire to accelerate operations on a global scale. Follow us. Who came up with a way of saying big stick policy? An international bold lotus. Tildong Zovan was the first American president. Has opened representatives of the African American get involved community in the White House. Theodore Zovan was the first American. He received the Nobel Peace Prize. Thanks for a successful The role of mediator helps. The Russian-Japanese war ended in a peaceful intent. Roosevelt was the leader of the progressive movement. This is shown through He defends domestic policies. It's called Score Deal. It promises to bring justice to the people, have an average income, breaking the monopoly in the commercial business, at the same time adjusting to the railway and the supply of medicine and clean food. He prioritized the introduction to preserve nature through the establishment of more gardens, forest and national monument, with the desire preservation of the country's natural resources. On foreign affairs, Bevan focuses on development cooperation in Central America, where he began his plan to build the Panama Canal. He expanded the development of the Navy and born the White Gid Fleet, traveling around the world to demonstrate U.S. naval power. During his tenure, Roosevelt not focused to issue policies related to the issue of collection. In the second term, Roosevelt continues to enact progressive policies. Most of these laws is all passed by Congress. To do and Ivan is reconstructed on Mount Rushmore. Together with the other three presidents were George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and Abraham Lincoln. Political historians often rank him in the top 5 on the charts, the greatest presidents in American history. What are your thoughts after watching this video? Please leave a comment in the comment section below. Subscribe. Watch other videos on your channel. Interact more with us on Facebook at fanpage Benno Sign Carpet at the bottom. A link to my page is in the description and the top comment below. Out if you're interested with stories about the business world. Let's go to Battlefly to tell stories, where there are stories about the business world. Extremely interesting. And now, hello and see you.